Hi, everybody. I'm Lee Walton, Marketing Director and an editor at Top Shelf Productions, imprint of IDW Publishing. And I'm really happy to be joined by Jared Cullum here, the author of the debut graphic novel, Cody. Jared,
Thanks for having me.
Jared, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? What's your background and what led you up to making this amazing book, Cody?
Sure. Well, first off, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to talk about the book and the process behind the book. For me, I guess I live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I've been doing cartoons for about maybe 9-10 years. And I've been, I guess you'd say, working in comics for the past 5 or so years, doing stuff for Jim Henson and Boom and Archaea. So I've got some books out there with them and some stories.
Beautiful.
Oh, thank you. And some stories coming down the pipe that haven't been announced yet. And then I live in Pittsburgh, and I am also a traditional painter. I paint with mostly watercolor and gouache. So 90% of what I do is watercolor and gouache, but I do a little bit of oil as well. A big part of my process is sort of going out into the field and collecting paintings and studying stuff from life. So materials, foliage, animals, that sort of thing, studying them in an environment and then bringing that information into my sort of comics and illustration.
So you're the rare comic book artist that actually goes outside on a regular basis.
I try to, as much as I can. I have 2 kids, so it makes it very difficult to get out much. But I also teach painting as well. I've been teaching plein air painting is what they call it. It's kind of the swanky word for outdoor painting on location, and also anatomy and figure painting and that kind of thing as well at a local art school. But yeah, it's a big part of my sort of process.
It definitely shows in the pages of Cody. I mean,
so
much of that is set out in the world. Sort of in the first half, it's largely in the Pacific Northwest and Alaska, right? And then there's a sort of transition. We don't want to give too much of the plot away, but it also moves to the big city. And we get to see not only your grasp of trees and forests and woodlands in the natural world, but we also get to see the city. We get to see the ocean, the docks. And I really love how you pull all of that together into a sort of coherent world. It all feels like part of the same world.
Thanks. Yeah, environments are a big deal to me. So backgrounds and using lighting as a key component in the storytelling. So, setting the mood or telling the story visually without actually using words, and using every tool that I have in the toolbox to do that. So, maybe if it's sad, it's raining, or if we're trying to bring the story to an end, maybe sort of end in a sort of sunset so that those colors and those lights are kind of bouncing all around and bring some life and luminescence to it that just help to tell the story without actually, explicitly telling the story. But environments are a big deal to me. So a lot of times in any of the stories that I write or paint, a big part of where it's going to be is a big part of the story, because I like painting really big environments. I like getting really involved, and even though I paint fairly loosely, it is really important to me to get really involved in the different environments and how those environments can be used to tell a story.
Sure. And, I would say as a reader, you make it look easy, but even just listening to you talk about it, I can tell there's a lot of thought that goes into, what color is each page going to be? How is the lighting going to play in the scene, et cetera? Can you tell us just a sort of elevator pitch or a short version of what it's about, maybe?
Sure.
For folks who haven't read it before.
So the story, Cody, is about a little girl, and she's kind of a lonely girl and a loner, and she loves comics and is sort of lost in that world of comics. And she stumbles across this bear, and they become fast friends because they help each other. But unfortunately, they're separated. So the real story becomes the journey of this bear trying to get back to this little girl, because she has to leave their summer trip and go back to their home in Seattle. And so the story is this bear's sort of quest to be reunited with his friend.
Awesome. One of the things I love about the book is that each character has such a great personality in their dialogue and the way they behave, but also just in their visual look. I remember something that I saw Xander Cannon and Kevin Cannon talking about once, which is that every character should have such a unique silhouette that you can
Yeah.
tell instantly who it is just by the shape of their body, and you can also
Yes.
learn a little bit about their who this person is from the shape of their body,
Yeah.
from the way that they stand and hold themselves. And I
Yeah.
love that that comes through in your book too.
Yeah. That's a big deal to me too. Yeah.
I was thinking about Cody, of course, the bear, about Katya, the main character, her grandmother, Meema, who's wonderful. And it must be a lot of fun to draw because she's
She's probably my favorite to draw in the story. I really like that character.
And then the other character is Joshua, who sort of comes in about halfway through and really kicks the story into a whole nother gear, as somebody who doesn't know the other human characters at first, but meets Cody
Sure.
partway through his journey. Did you have particular ideas or inspirations behind those different characters?
I did. Definitely structurally, again, going back to that sort of using all the tools, the shape structure of how the character is sort of composed, the sort of maquette that I build the actual painted character on, is a really big deal to me. So characters like Meema are built entirely on circles because I want them to give that sort of soft sense of friendliness, but also eccentricity. So I want you to be able to tell who she is before you actually hear any words that she says or see how she moves. I want you to get a sense of who the character is, and also, her kind of walk cycle, how she would walk, and how she would interact with the world. And then Katya is a little bit different because there's allusions to a sort of pre-story or a sub-story that I don't explicitly say because it's meant for kids, it alludes that she is in a darker place. She's in a more lonely place, so she's not as settled or as confident. So for her, the structure of her character is built, and the way I try to compose the panels, every panel she's in, it's structured on the juxtaposition of circle versus triangle. So the triangle and the circle being sort of very opposed shapes. So her jacket, for example, is very specifically designed to be sort of triangular.
Okay.
And then she's often sitting sort of in, with her legs crossed in a way that creates a sort of triangular shape versus the circle shape. So anytime you see her, there's a sort of juxtaposition between those two shapes.
Wow.
And then color, of course, too, is a big storytelling component, given that our eyes are generally attracted to the this is something I've picked up in plein air painting and outdoor painting, is our eyes are drawn to the opposing colors as well. These colors on the opposite sides of the wheel. So your red and green, and your blue and orange, and then what I'm getting to is the purples and the yellows. So I used a very saturated, so very intense yellow and purple in the design of Katya, the main character, and then also in the design of the bear is comprised mostly of yellow or yellow ochre, so that no matter what scene the two characters are in, I can sort of lower the saturation of the environment, and your eye will always be drawn to the stark contrast of yellow and purple, either the purple jacket and the yellow bear, or the purple jacket and the yellow hair. So there's always sort of those color contrasts that bring you into to following those characters. You see that a lot, orange and blue.
Yeah.
Like Goku, or
or movie posters.
Yeah. Your eyes are
teal
drawn to those opposed colors. So, and then just in a painting process, anytime I'm doing a field of blue, I will often charge it with orange. So anytime you see a lot of orange, you'll see a lot of blue sort of injected in it, and same with blue. A big blue shadow, there's a lot of orange in it. And then Joshua is he's based on an old friend of mine, unfortunately, who passed away, and has more to do with his spirit as a person, because the main thing, I wanted to have a helper, and I had the idea for a sort of separate story of that character. The idea was a sort of a couple different stories that I threaded together when I sort of discovered the theme that I wanted it to be about. So the main thing I wanted his character and then Katya's character, the difference between them and then the other humans in the world is that they act first in love and they act first in kindness and helping and not fear. So that was sort of the main thing is I wanted Josh to be a sort of a representation of hope. He's also down in luck kind of person who is choosing not to be a victim, but choosing hope and choosing to be jovial and find the good in life. And that just thematically was something that I really wanted to have be part of the statement of the story or be part of the greater statement of the story, which is sort of about finding your place in the world and finding a place you belong.
Yeah, I mean that's so beautifully put. I think for Katya as being a young character who's reading all of these sort of comic book adventures and then has an adventure sort of thrust upon her, it's so valuable to have Joshua as a potential role model for her as
Right.
demonstrating that you can be a grown up and still have that instinct first to not respond out of fear, but to respond out of love and compassion. And maybe that's what makes you a hero,
Right.
fundamentally.
Yeah.
I really love that. And also like they're able to help each other. Cody and Katya are able to help Josh just as he's able to help them.
Right.
And everybody sort of gets to a better place by the end of the story, which we won't spoil.
Sure.
But it's so heartwarming and just an incredible job. I can't compliment you enough about it. But tell me a little bit more about the research that went into the book. I mean, you don't have a pet bear personally.
No. Just tons and tons of sketches of boats and bears and using basically anything I can find, any kind of um, visual I could use. For the bear, I did a lot of studies of documentaries. So just putting on documentaries and pausing every 3-4 seconds and just filling as many pages in a sketchbook as I can of bears and also studying their skeletal anatomy too, just to get the idea of how the hips function and the knees and then and how they run versus how they walk or climb, so that you can sort of I can squash and stretch that once I sort of designed the character rig again, built mostly on circles to give the sense of friendliness and warmth.
That's a really good point about the walking versus running. I'm remembering scenes from the book where you can tell he's relaxed, or scenes where you can tell he's furiously dashing after something.
Right. Yeah.
Because he moves differently and he holds himself differently.
Exactly. Yeah. And a lot goes into that too, with gravity and how gravity pulls, or how the weight is balanced, and the same for the other characters. I mean, for the characters in general, I do a lot with designing the shape first, because I've spent a great deal of time studying anatomy. And so I sort of can apply that knowledge to the rig. So to me, it's more about building that sort of the structure of the rig. And then, of course, for the backgrounds, the city and the forest and the ocean, I spend a great deal of time painting on location. I have a lot of footage on YouTube. I teach on YouTube as well of just teaching how to do it and how to look at things simply. And between the two in terms of process, which is just taking a scene or taking, when we're cartooning, we're trying to take the breadth and the craziness of reality and really simplify it and boil it down to just the essence so that you can communicate, quickly and concisely. And painting is essentially the same thing. So I spend a ton of time in terms of research painting on location, because it's all about taking a scene like a forest scene that's full of rocks and trees and whatever else, and really just simplifying it down to the most simple values to communicate an idea as concisely as possible. And then we can use that tool to sort of tell stories quickly and concisely. So that's what I really like between the two. I find a real similarity between cartooning and building cartoons and then painting on location.
Yeah, that's really well put. It's a simplification process to find the essence of it. Well, having done this, your first full solo graphic novel, I hope you feel good. It's a great accomplishment.
I do.
Do you have any advice of lessons that you've learned or that you would give somebody who's trying to do their first graphic novel?
Sure. Um, I would definitely say um, have a plan and then just stick to it. Whatever you're working on, just stick to it and see it through to the end. Because I had other projects before Cody, um, and I learned a lot. Every project, even if it didn't end up being, a published thing or whatever, or just even if it was just a mini comic, just really enjoy the process and uh, learn to get comfortable just in the process and in the project. Because if you're going to do a graphic novel, it just there's no way around the fact that it just takes a long time. So it's I find knowing people, a lot of people who have started and then stopped, it's very difficult to keep putting gas in the tank. And I think in that regard, find some way to put gas in the tank, which is for me studying traditional painters, so studying paintings of the late 1800s, having something I can get excited about, my own sort of sandbox to play around in. Because when I'm painting on location, I don't owe the painting to anybody, and I don't have an editor or anybody who's going to come by and tell me it doesn't look on model or something. I can sort of just enjoy it and play and experiment, or pick up a stick off the ground and scratch texture on it and just see what happens. And that for me puts a lot of gas in the tank that I can go back to comics and sit down and bring a sort of refreshed look, when I sit down to work.
Fantastic. What advice would you have for somebody who's younger, who is just starting to really take art seriously, maybe? And
Sure.
do you remember where what that was like for you, and
Sure.
what would be helpful to a kid in that position?
I think for me, or I spent a lot of time sort of beating my head against the wall to learn stuff. So I wanted to learn painting, and I spent a lot of time just making terrible paintings. And we live in a world where, like, if my faucet's broken, I can look on YouTube and figure out how to fix it. So I think take advantage of the opportunities, because there's so many opportunities for advice online, watching people's process online, learning directly from great people. So I would say do what you can to get, if you're at an age that you with your parents can get involved in some sort of online program to study art, I would say do that and just draw as much as you can, because that's the biggest hurdle, is just getting enough time and drawing under your belt to discover how you like to draw and what you like to draw, and just get all of that stuff out of the way. Because it's a lot of it is quantity. A lot of it is just learning the scales on the piano, so that no one just wakes up playing the Hungarian Rhapsody or whatever. Like, you've got to spend a lot of time practicing and getting your fingers ready. So I think, just kind of like I said with doing a graphic novel for an older person, is you've got to learn to love it. And if you don't love it, and you can't learn to just sit and draw for hours and hours and hours and love it, it's going to be very difficult,
Mm-hmm.
to have the desire to want to do anything with it. So,
But I like what you said also about drawing things that you love and making sure that you're putting gas in your tank,
yeah,
creatively, and that you're having fun with it.
absolutely. I
Nice
mean,
work.
and of course, read comics and study directly from them. I spent a lot of time copying people who I really liked. That's how I learned painting. I studied Winslow Homer, John Singer Sargent, going to the library, just getting the oversized books, and then just filling sketchbooks with watercolor studies of Winslow Homer paintings and Sargent and a bunch of others. And same with comics. Find some people who are great. Bone, Christian Slade's Corgi, City of Secrets by Victoria Ying.
Mm.
Find inspiration and fill your sketchbook with studies. Just figure out how they, undo the code. Look at it like the Matrix and figure out how they built their characters and how they did it.
That's awesome. I feel so inspired now, Jared. I'm about to go and get a set of paints and go sit outside and
Awesome.
practice.
You should.
Folks, if you're watching and you want to hear more from Jared, where can they find you on YouTube?
Sure. My YouTube channel is Jared Loves to Draw, and I do demos. Most of the questions I get are about painting. So a lot of it is traditional painting, but I also do cartooning and then comics panels process. So my process for painting with watercolor, and then, as applied to comics. So there's a lot on there. And then I'm also on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and all the rest too.
Awesome. And the book is Cody. It's fantastic. And
Thanks.
you have a lot to be proud of, Jared. Everybody go out and read it. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll catch
Thanks.
you later.
Thanks for having me.